And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So in this week's episode, we'll be talking about some interesting things that has happened in the past week or so. So first, we'll be talking about Volocopter, a company that's offering something different for a change. They're an urban air mobility, offering air taxis for air transport. So it's kind of interesting. Next, we have a company or group of students actually who's developing an interesting vehicle concept in terms of utilizing solar power. So we'll take a look at that one. Then next, we'll be talking about games. If you're a Nintendo Switch owner, you'd be interested to know that there are several games that's coming in the Nintendo Switch Online regarding Nintendo 64 games. So if you played a lot of games in the past, then that's something you can look forward to. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll be talking about Tesla's issue with their Tesla vehicle. Now, we're not talking about the batteries here, if it catches fire, or even their full self-driving feature. If your car broke down, can you move it to a safe location? So there's an issue with their neutral capability, so to speak. And the next is we'll be discussing the government or country's government in terms of piloting for back to face-to-face classes in other regions in the country here. So we'll take a closer look if it makes sense for the government to resume face-to-face despite the rising cases of the coronavirus or even the Delta variant here. And finally, for our last story, we'll be talking about a 1,000 carat diamond. So if you like diamonds, it's going to cost you a lot to be able to acquire this. But question is, is it worth the trouble? But we'll talk about that in a bit. Anyway, so going to our first story as mentioned. So Volocopter. Now, one would think that traveling from one place to another, having your own vehicle would be a tremendous gift, right? But nowadays, obviously, with a lot of people driving along the roads, traffic has been the main issue left and right. And as more people, as we grow in our population, more people having more cars, the roads are being more congested. And so obviously looking for alternative modes for traveling is where Volocopter comes in to offer urban air mobility here. So let's take a look here. Wait, where the heck was it? There you go. So they're offering a new service here. So they're trying to penetrate the market in the United States. So the company has tried or has formed a new partnership with the Los Angeles-based Urban Mobility Labs, or UML, in terms of bringing the Volocopter, the EVTOL or EVTOL, I think it's EVTOL technology across the United States. So offering Volocity air taxi in the United States. So as you can see, it's not that big. I mean, question is, in terms of costing, would you be interested in riding this service? Obviously, a helicopter ride, which I haven't been to, could be quite expensive. And obviously, if costs can be lowered so that majority or the mass could afford it, then that could something be of interest. And obviously, especially for people who lives in the city and needs to travel to and from their home to their workplace, and if there's heavy congestion on the roads, having this air mobility is a great option. But I'm not too excited in terms of the capability here. Obviously, there's no 100% way of being safe in this vehicle, as shown in when helicopter crash, when Mr. Kobe Bryant passed away a few years back, with regards to the safety issues of or the viability of a regular helicopter, and now offering this to the masses here. Obviously, making affordable is key, and the safety is tantamount here before people would even consider uh, adopting or using their services here. Now, the company here is German-based urban air mobility developer. It has different operations in different cities. So the goal here is to bring its airport and aircraft manufacturing services to the masses here. So it's not just the helicopter that they're offering for mobility for people, but for drones. I think similar to how Amazon is planning with regards to their drones delivering packaging goods and services here. Now, actually, the company, which is based on Germany, as mentioned, has been focusing on the Volo drone. Uh, it can lift heavy cargo without actual presence of an so sort of like an automated self-driving uh, drone, so to speak. Now, obviously, there will be limitation as to what a drone can carry depending on the size of the drone. And obviously, the company expanding in the United States needs to market heavily in terms of how will it be received by the U.S. consumer here, especially for businesses who needs to travel quickly from one place to another. I think it makes sense for a certain niche market, but offering to the wide masses would be a tremendous boon in terms of being able to travel from one place to another, especially if you're an issue here is how can you land a Volo drone or even a Volocopter here, because you need the helipad to be able to accommodate the actual vehicle or the helicopter here that we're talking about here. Anyway, with regards to their future goals, obviously one of the key issues which I've mentioned earlier is the safety of the vehicle here. Obviously, you don't want to incur any accidents or even fatalities with regards to this one, and it scares away potential customers here. Not like when you say an aircraft, even though there are accidents that happen, but it's a rarity, not a common occurrence here. It's even more safer to ride an airplane compared to driving a vehicle on land. And obviously the issue with regards to equitable air transportation, so making it more accessible for more people, is another goal that they need to strive better. And obviously continuing to innovate, finding ways to meet the needs of your consumer or for the public for that matter, is important. That could not just benefit individual citizens, people, and eventually help the business here as well. Because I can see the future where helicopters would be flying left and right here, uh, carrying people from one place to another, and maybe you can have a similar typical consumer based helicopter where you can just bring your, if you have a house, you can bring your volocopter and park it at your house, and then you know use it again to go to your office, so it's much quicker. But obviously, where are you going to park it in your office here? So your parking area would be full of helicopters here. But we'll see if that would catch on in the future. Anyway, next is we'll be talking about sticking with technology here. So if you see a helicopter trying to offer services as an air taxi, here we have a house on wheels, so to speak. A company, not a company, a group of students in a university is offering solar technology by offering it house on wheels, so to speak. So the article here as arstechnica.com. So, oh wait, what happened here? So here you can see that the creators of a self-sustaining house on wheels, as I mentioned. So this was built by a group of students in Netherlands. So planning to bring their solar-powered vehicle across, going to Spain. So that's a 3,000-kilometer trek, and obviously to increase the interest of people with regards to, you know, what do you call this? Whether, people or investors would be inclined to help grow this segment, since obviously vehicles is important for people to travel from one place to another. But the problem here is the adoption from regular combustible engine to, let's say, electric vehicle, solar powered, or even hydro. So, has to be feasible, because at the end of the day, when, looking for a better alternative for gas powered engine for EV vehicles, is the battery capability, because how do you charge it quickly? And I think solar power has the same issue here. And obviously, sun is a perpetual source of energy, but obviously with some limitations, because at night you cannot use it as effectively, and then even during daytime, if there are clouds covering the sky, so it's not getting direct sunlight, then there are still limitations. So how do you overcome those obstacles? And just looking at the photo here, if you think about it, if they are able to face those challenges, and people would be more inclined, even I would be inclined to adopt it. And in terms of battery capability, storing capability, so that you don't have to worry about charging it again. So obviously we haven't reached that mark, but obviously innovating in terms of what they're doing here, is important as well here. So they're calling it the Stella Vita. So they were made at the Eindhoven University of Technology. So they're a solar team composing of 22 members who created a solar-powered family car called Stella Lux. And obviously, based on their success, there were excess capability here. So the device that they created could power other electric vehicles, because it has so much energy left, which is good, right? But the question here is, what other ventures can they go after? So which is what they did here with the Stella Vita, looking for ideas to, what can they power. And obviously the vehicle is one of the more common devices that we have, that we use often to travel from one place to another here, which brings us the Stella Vita Loca. Okay. So the vehicle here, as you can see, is aerodynamic. It's a teardrop shape, and then you can see the solar powered panels on top of it, and sports a series of solar panels on its roof. And then it has additional roofings that slides up when stationary. So let's see that part. So yeah, there you go. So you can clearly see here of what it looks like. And then making it easier to stand inside and cook or sleep. So it gives you more space, so to speak. And then the panels can also fold outward to increase their surface area to as much as 17 and a half to 17 and a half square meters, which is not bad. Now the interesting part here is its mileage. Obviously, at the end of the day, one of the main issues for adopting a different type of technology for vehicles is its mileage. Now, ideally here it mentions that it can travel as far as 730 kilometers or 450 miles on a sunny day. Now, obviously, conditions changes varied from day to day, and that's a concerning thing. Could vary. So from 450, as low as how much? Could be 400, 300, or even 200. So addressing those problems would be key. I think storing those solar powered cells is important, so that you don't miss an opportunity. So let's say if it's full battery, so it's continuously charging, just like your phone. If it's plugged to an outlet, and then it stops up to certain, if it reaches full capacity, and then if it depletes, and then it tries to charge again, and so forth. I don't know if that would work, but finding ways is how to solve this issue is key factor here. Anyway, the vehicle's battery can be charged to full which is problematic, can take 2 to 3 days, which is, uh, if you're stuck in the middle of the road and you have to wait for 2 to 3 days, I think that's not going to be practical here. So finding ways how to store the battery so that it can last for however length or distance that you're going to use the vehicles here. And then obviously the advantage of this vehicle, if it can be done properly or implemented properly, is you can treat it like a home away from home, like a Winnebago, so to speak. It has can put in a bed, a fridge, a toilet, even a couch, or even a small cooking area here. So it could be a mobile house, literally speaking here. Now, obviously, according to one of the engineers, you have to choose how you use your energy, and don't since you don't have endless energy, which is one of the main downsides of having this type of technology early on, since it hasn't still been fully formed, the idea or how to address those key problems as mentioned earlier. But once we get to the point that they can address those, one of those main issues, I think more people is willing to adopt here. Obviously, resourcing those technologies in terms of cost is one thing, and then addressing the battery issues, then the fast charging, similar to how the EV vehicles are dealing with those issues. I think if they can, somehow meld it, make it a hybrid of sorts, solar powered and even, electric powered, would be nice, as long as we get the desired result, which is, a functioning vehicle that you don't have to worry. If it's perpetual, won't it be nice that someday you'll be driving a car, you're not worried about energy anymore, whether it's be electric powered, maybe the roads are electrified so that it can be charged continuously, and then as an option it can be solar powered. So there are different ways to store energy here. But anyway, according to their horse, as mentioned, the vehicle could theoretically reach the market in 5. So it's still a few years away before you'll see it for, public consumption. They also stated that we have technology to make those kinds of automobiles, but consumers will need to warm up to the idea, which is, a key component here. So adoption is critical here, and obviously making those types of unique designs may be problematic, because if someone is not familiar with how it looks, just like how, electric vehicles are trying to design to mimic or look like a regular vehicle or combustible engine, it's a big daunting task. So aesthetics is important, as well as the internals components of a vehicle here. So we'll see if, if the solar powered concept alternative for vehicles would be viable sometime in the future. Anyway, going into games here, let's see. When you're talking of Nintendo, so if you own a Nintendo Switch, so you might be thinking to yourself, you've bought some AAA games, so maybe you played Zelda, you even played Animal Crossing and so forth. Now, obviously, they're offering their online community, or online for Switch Online, to play retro games, but it looks paltry based on my experience that they're offering not really popular games. There's no incentive for you to play those games, and Nintendo has a lot of retro, very nice games, and I think they should offer that to the masses here, so that the value of paying for those subscription is a worthwhile endeavor. Anyway, so good news here. Nintendo is offering the N64 old games, so it'll be accessible now. But the question is, it's going to cost here. And according to TechRadar.com, wait here. There you go. So according to TechRadar, so it will offer N64 games now for the Nintendo Switch Online, but it's going to cost you. So it's the wrong article here. Where the heck is it? Let me see. Eh? Wait here. I think there was a problem with the switching here. Anyway, so going back here. So when you talk of the Switch games here, so there are a lot of retro games that they have made that have been popular here, and they're also, I think, offering Game Boy and Game Boy Color games could also make their way to the Nintendo Switch Online, which I think is, kind of great. I think it should have been a long overdue uh, scenario here, because a lot of loyal Nintendo gamers have been playing retro games from the Famicom days all the way to the N64, all the way to the Switch now. So question here is, why is there a delay here? I think a lot of consumers have been begging for more content from them. I mean, developing AAA games is one, independent games, indie games, and then obviously retro games would be a welcome for many gamers, especially nowadays that people are clamoring for more content, whether it's watching video or playing games here. But the interesting here is it's going to cost you a bit more than what you're expecting. So a premium version of the Nintendo Switch Online will be offered. Now the idea here is maybe a slight more expensive. So if you're paying $30 a year, could be as much as $35. So it's not a big jump, but nonetheless, Nintendo tend to charge more for their services or for their products, especially for AAA games, which they do not give discounts. So you have to pay sticker price for them, which is, could be a good thing and a bad thing. Obviously, good for them, bad for us consumers, because hey, they keep on doing that, because if consumers is willing to pay sticker price, then who are they to stop it, right? Anyway, the company has continued to, which is kind of funny, to deep fry their NES and SNES games onto its Switch Online service, but many of which are questionable. So they have adopted some old retro games, but nothing that would say, oh, it's something that we should come and play here. And I think they're missing the mark here, similar to how Microsoft is offering their Game Pass here. So you can play all the catalogs here, from all the way to the past, all the way to the present, or even to the future here, which is, they're missing out a lot here. And Nintendo has a lot of, tremendous games. And then obviously the playing of the N64 games would be a great idea, which is, I think, should be a long time coming here. Anyway, the purpose here is to encourage more Switch owners to subscribe, which I don't know, maybe more, but not majority of it, because even I have apprehensions regarding, unless they build more catalogs in their Switch Online games, it'll take a long time before I would adopt it. Wherein, if I go online, I could just play any of the games that I would want if it's offered there. Then I might consider subscribing here. Now, whether the higher subscription fee is fair, well, the markets will dictate that either way. Anyway, compared to other subscription, uh, it's much cheaper compared to Sony's PlayStation Plus and obviously Microsoft's Xbox Live. Now, obviously, the offerings from those two companies, game publishers, is or gaming platform, is they offer a wide variety of games, not just retro games but also current games, and they also give free games every month, right? If you subscribe to the service, which is, hopefully Nintendo would see that there's an opportunity here, and think of the consumers here, of what the games that people would like to play, the retro games. Wouldn't it be nice to play the old Super Mario games from 1, 2, and even 3, and be able to play it in your Switch console? I mean, I'd pay for, I won't say top dollar, but I would pay a small amount of fee to be able to play it if it's included in your what do you call this? If it's included in your Switch Online catalog, then I'd be willing to play for it, right? But anyway, we'll see what happens there. Anyway, next we'll be talking about Tesla's issue. It just keeps on going on and on. Now the main issue here, it's not about their software, the full self-driving, which I have an issue with that, and then their battery issue, which caught fire, whether that's an isolated or a rampant issue. But nonetheless, it needs to be rectified, because it scares off adapters of whether they should purchase an electric vehicle. But aside from that, there's an issue here. So if you currently own a Tesla vehicle, one of the main issues that you might encounter is, if it stops in the middle of the vehicle, in the middle of the road, you'll have a problem. You will not be able to pull it aside so that you don't congest or block the highway here or in the road. And is it an intention, or is it something that the companies, or in this case Tesla, neglect to look at if there was a problem? Because if typically a car shuts down, you can just put it into neutral and then pull the car or push it manually on the curve. But in the case here, if it locks up, it locks up, in park position, so you cannot move it. So you can just imagine in the middle of the highway if that were to happen here. Anyway, according to the article here, jalopnik.com, so the Tesla braking itself on the highway is a reminder that electric cars need to solve their neutral problem. And it's not just that, the neutral issue. Think about it. If your car is shut down, and take note, you rely on battery, energy to support your vehicle, everything else, right? There should be a backup or a separate system that you could just integrate or use in case of emergency. So imagine that you're so reliant on the view screen for the Tesla vehicle, right? The dashboard, so to speak, is the go-to dashboard for where you interact with the vehicle. And if it shuts down, how are you going to operate it still? That's why traditional vehicles, you can still, use the blinking lights, turn on the lights separately, and then there are different switches that which I tend to appreciate nowadays if looking at this problem from electric vehicles in the present. And now one of the main issues, if your car breaks down, you have little to no choice on what to do here. And what's interesting here, it was mentioned that there was an incident with the Tesla, which was recounted by the owner. So let's take a look here. Let's see what was the tweet was. So you can see here, so you can just imagine in the middle of the night or at night, and then your car breaks down, and according to him, the joys of living on the bleeding edge. So this is the price of being a early adopter of technology here. So it literally locks up in the middle of the highway, and obviously you cannot do anything about it. So there must be a system to disable that locking mechanism here, which is, I think this is a big oversight from the company, especially from Tesla's side, especially the engineers, that there should be safety mechanisms to protect the passengers and other motorists in the road. Because you could just imagine the dread that you have to deal with, that there are a lot of vehicles passing by, small and even large vehicles, or even trucks, trailer trucks passing by. So he goes on to say that what happened was the car began to beep, and a warn that says that he needs to pull up immediately due to some power issue. And then after that, then it locks up, and then the car comes to a halt, which is not a good idea, a good experience. And then being stuck in the middle of a highway is not good. And to be able to do that, the parking brake needs to be released. So there must be a fail-safe system, just like a handbrake system for braking. If your brake doesn't work, you should have a handbrake that overrides the braking system, so that you can ensure the safety of your vehicle and the passengers themselves. And this issue is not just limited to Tesla. It's a common issue for other EV manufacturers here. What's interesting here is to be able to address the problem from that person, you have to use a flatbed tow truck. And it's not just a regular tow truck that you can use. It has to be a particular one, so that it can accommodate the intricacies of managing the vehicle. Since it's stuck, it cannot move. So you can just imagine what type of tow truck you need to be able to do that, so to speak. Anyway, that's why electric vehicles has some way to go in terms of offering solutions for the car neutrality, in a sense. And which is interesting, some car manufacturers are able to find solutions here somewhat, and it goes to neutral. So in the case of Nissan and Chevy, the Nissan Leaf or Chevy Bolt, so what happens here, the cars automatically shift to neutral. So it can be set or programmed once, let's say, the battery dies out. So obviously there's no more control from the driver's side, or the drivers themselves. So there should be a safety mechanisms in place here. So if other car manufacturers can do this, I think Tesla should be able to do this. And why is it that We're seeing a lot of issues coming from Tesla. If maybe they're trying to sell as many cars as they can, and overlooking some of its flaws, which is kind of interesting. With the fully self-driving, it's kind of dangerous marketing it as a autonomous capability, which is not. It should be advertised as full assist driving capability, which I think much more reasonable here. And obviously, free rolling your vehicle in the middle road, is important, especially if your vehicle shuts down, especially if there's no battery left. And obviously, that's why the early adoption for EVs is still, the demand is growing, but there are still issues that needs to be addressed before you can see in the future that there's more EV vehicles on the road versus combustible engine here. And what's interesting here, uh, there are regulations that states that all EV must have a mechanical way to get into a freewheeling state regardless of the condition, regardless of the battery or the drivetrain capabilities here. And it's not just the locking mechanism of the parking mechanism. It should be also the other features, doors, windows, or even trunks, so that in case of an emergency, you can still get out of your vehicle safely without any help, or maybe there's a manual unlock mechanism, so that if anything were to happen inside and everything were to die out, there should be a way to hard reset your just like how you hard reset your computer here, which tends to happen more often than not. Imagine that in a cooped out vehicle here, which is a not a nice experience if you were to be in that position here. Anyway, next we have here with regards to some local news. Now, there have been reports, despite the pandemic that's still going on, whether here in our country and abroad. Now, some countries have been opening up their businesses and then for schools to reopen. Now, in our situation here, should students be allowed to go to face, even though at a limited basis here? Now, the government here, according to our government, they're going to do a pilot run of a limited face-to-face, which I think is a terrible idea because the protocols that we have, is it really working for adults? Then imagine that for kids. It's one thing if they're adults that they are responsible for the actions. The kids are still not yet mature enough to understand the right and wrong, difference between right and wrong. So they could be careless, and it only takes one incident for one to be infected, so that the rest will be infected. That's just kids in school. What's more is by the time they come home, they might infect their family member, which is even worse. So can we say with confidence or 100% confidence that that will not happen? Because I think that's the main issue here. If we cannot guarantee the safety of the kids or even the families, then maybe we have to rethink if it's the right time to reopen the school. Now, there were mentions in the article that says that there were people pushing for face-to-face because of the terrible experience of online. But there's a reason, because it's not safe to go out unless you can guarantee the safety of the kids. You can just imagine traveling from one place, from your home to the school. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. And obviously, best case scenario, nothing happens. But it only takes one incident to get infected and spread it quickly. And that's the thing that we should be concerned with. But anyway, so here, according to the article at Rappler.com, so this is what we know regarding the test or the pilot run for the face-to-face class. So, sir, they will reopen 120 schools, which is a lot if you think about it, which has already been approved by our president, Mr. Duterte, which should be cause of concern if you think about it. What's interesting here, Philippines is one of the last two countries who haven't yet reopened the schools, and there's a reason, because we still haven't dealt properly or how to find a viable solution in terms of containing the spread of the virus or even eliminating it. Because in terms of dealing with the coronavirus, diba, COVID-19, has all the people, majority of the world population have been vaccinated. And obviously, if that's not the case, then how can we ask people, even kids, which is my main contention here, that they should, be held responsible for their actions? Obviously, that's why we have parents here that has to guide them and Obviously, it's not a requirement per se for them to go to school. It has to be. It's optional here, but obviously, it goes way beyond than what's being presented. But anyway, so they mention here that the Philippine government has been criticized for how it handled the pandemic, which is kind of true because we were been in lockdown for the longest time compared to other nations, and yet we have nothing to show for it. Because you can see here, the cases have been rising, and whether they say it's been decreasing or plateauing, how can we really be truly be certain about it in terms of capabilities here of handling sick patients here? You can look at the hospitals here. If they're at full capacity here, we're already reaching the tipping point of managing the pandemic here. So education obviously is important nonetheless. Can we stop it? Obviously not. But having online classes poses a different set of problems here. So obviously, having internet access is problematic. So I think it makes sense for a lot of people to push for face-to-face. But again, the safety of the children should be number one. And question is, are all the people present? Should they be vaccinated before they go to class? Students, faculties, admins, personnel who works at the school, should they be required? And obviously, one of the main issues here is if you're going to have limited face-to-face, there has to be social distancing. If you think about it, before the pandemic, the room capacity for each class has been already, we don't even have enough classes to handle students. So how are you going to do that? You'll have alternating class. So let's say you have 50 in a class. 25 will be the first session and another session for the second. Imagine the burden that the faculty or instructor would be held upon to deal with that one. So, it's a problematic. For me, I think that the best way is until you can guarantee the safety of our children, of other children or kids being able to do that. Now, even though the DepEd or Department of Education said that the RAN's operational guidelines were prepared together with the DOH, Department of Health, or even with the World Health Organization. But again, guidelines is one thing. How you implement it effectively is another aspect. You can say all the nice guidelines that you say, oh, this will be the best way. But again, you're talking about kids. And if kids were just to forget one of those guidelines, then by then it's too late, right? And obviously, the key question here is it realistic to expect all kids, not just some, not just majority, all of them to follow suit, which is, I think should be the main question that have been posed before. And, having personal protective equipment is good enough. But what if the kids were to remove because they're not comfortable, because it's hot, it's humid, I have a difficult time breathing. Typically, kids would, I'm not comfortable, I just remove it. They use the term bahala na, something like that. Then sanitation, are they following the guidelines? Is that just the case? Is everyone else following the guidelines? Then detection and referral. It's as if, we have, a contract tracing system that's in place already that's effective enough to do that. And obviously, so you're assuming there that there will be no containment here, that there could be a possibility that one would get infected. And can we act quickly? Because as I mentioned, from 1 could get to 5 to 10 to 50 to 100, and then it could multiply quickly, and which is a scary thought, which I don't want to happen, right? And we can take all the precautions that we want, and at the end of the day, it only just takes one big mistakes to ruin everything, so to speak. Anyway, so going back, so actually even the what's fun, the Education Secretary Leonor Briones mentioned that schools have adequate facilities. Yeah, the facility, let's see, has adequate capability, but the question is going to the facility, the schools, is the problematic part. Whether kids are walking to schools, commuting, through jeepneys, buses, or whatever transportation that they're using, there's a lot of risk involved because you may catch it along the way. So, offering those protocols is a good idea for adults, but I don't know if that's going to be as effective if you're dealing with kids here. And what's interesting here is a maximum of 100 public schools in categorized minimal risk, which is should give them more confidence, maybe, but still, there's still risk involved. So it may not be as pronounced in major cities like in Metro Manila or in Cebu or even in Davao. But the question here is, are we going to risk so that it can multiply and grow again, just like before? Now, there's additional 20 private schools who's going to join in the test pilot here, which is kind of interesting when Briones mentioned, kung safe ang pilot and if it is effective, then we will gradually increase the number of schools. What if it fails? That's my main problem. So, iintayin pa natin. Are we going to wait until something terrible happens before we even do something about it? Because if our system in place is not effective enough, then maybe we should rethink our actions. Kasi, you're assuming here na it's kung safe siya, paano pag hindi? That's a question here. If it's not safe, then you already knew going into this, making that decision that it's not going to be 100% effective, even if it's just 99%. Right? That 1% could be detrimental for everyone else. And then he goes on to say, ang mahalaga, babantayan natin ang risk. No, hindi babantayan ng risk. We don't want to guard the risk. We want to reduce or eliminate the risk. Because if risk, were to spread, then, by then, it's end game, right? And he goes on to say, kapag may pagbabago, if there's any change, talagang ititigil na, well, by then it's too late, right? You're already reacting to this rather than being proactive about it. Anyway, so what's interesting here, who will be participating, which is my concerning pa, the youngest who will be participating are kindergarten children. You can just imagine, little kids, as young as 4, 5, 6 years old, going to school, you can just imagine, obviously, kids, diba? Kids will be kids here that, no matter what you tell them, obviously they have their own mind, and if they don't like what they see, they'll just do whatever they want. And, can you guarantee the safety of those children if they were to get infected? Who's going to pay the bill if they get infected? That's my question. See, it's easy enough to say, it's safe. The facility is enough. Who's going to pay? Is the government going to pay the bill here? Which is, the cost is going to be unsurmountable. You can just imagine. Similar to what happened to India, right? With the spread of the virus. Anyway, so what's interesting here is, if your school is included in the pilot, can you opt out? So is there an option not to join the pilot run? So obviously here, according to the DepEd, they go on to say that there must be a written support and consent of parents, which is, if I'm a parent, I'll be very apprehensive about this, because why would I risk my kids? And if they get infected, I'll get infected. And, you do the math. So it can grow quickly here. And will vaccination be required here? Obviously, there's a debate here, obviously, of data privacy here requiring it. Now, in other countries, like in the United States, there are some states that require to be able to do your job or work, you need to be vaccinated. But the question is, can we get everyone vaccinated? We still have a problem vaccinating the majority of our population here. So, again, we can't even vaccinate for the COVID-19 strain. How can we ask for certain requirements that you have to show proof that you were vaccinated? It's very difficult to do all of those things where there's a lot of lacking in terms of helping out everyone here. And then you have the Health Undersecretary Maria Vergire. The government is fully aware of the possibility of infection. And again, I go back to that notion. If you know there's going to be a high likelihood of infection, why would you risk the kids to be infected here? Is there another alternative reason? That's why we're pushing for the resumption of face-to-face classes? Shouldn't it be that we should try to find a way to improve the online facility of learning here? So is there a way for that to happen? Obviously, it's going to be cost-intensive here. So either way, either you improve the facility for online learning or you improve the safety for face-to-face resumption, which I think it's a more manageable here, because either way, there's a lot of issues with, the education system in our public schools here anyway. So in terms of facility, classroom, salary pay, and so forth, and on and on. What's interesting, she goes on to say, that there are contingency plans that are being drafted, so it's not yet fully formed, so it's still on the process. And this will be a separate guideline from the joint circular by the DepEd DOH in case of infections will happen. So they're expecting there will be infection, which is, I keep on reiterating, if there even a slight chance of rest happening, or spread happening with our young kids. Imagine, 5 6 years old. You cannot hold them responsible for, unless you put them in a protective environment, put them inside a hazmat suit. I don't think they would wear it anyway. So people who are advocating for pushing for reopening schools are not thinking it through, because even though learning remotely hasn't been as effective as one would like, but it's our best option right now, right? Or rather, otherwise we stop the schools for now until we can control it, mitigate the rest, then we can resume it with confidence. So you don't have to worry the protocols anymore, right? Or the spread of the virus, so to speak. And you have to create a lot of awareness here, so to speak. So we'll see, because again, if you notice, if you don't contain the spread of the virus, it just does not affect the education. It also affects the businesses here. It affects everything else in our country. And if we can contain it, then we can move on and improve the situation of our economy, and it benefits everyone. That's why tackling the issues one at a time, it's overwhelming. I can just imagine those people making those hard decisions in the government sector here. Anyway, finally, for our last story, so in terms of precious items, so diamonds is a girl's best friend. Now, according to Reuters.com, there was a massive uncut diamond that was unveiled in New York, and it's gargantuan. It's a 1,000 carat diamond here. So let's take a look. So you can see here, it's pretty big. So obviously, a big diamond is it's just raw diamond, so they have to cut it, refine it, and question is, will you? How much is it going to sell in terms of price here? I'm assuming it's going to be millions of dollars here. But anyway, so the mining company that was able to extract this diamond is Lucera Diamond Corporation, which manufactures HB Antwerp. So it's a 1,175 carat diamond, which was presented in New York, as mentioned. So they're saying that it's the largest rough diamond in the world, or whether the United States, for that matter, but it's the third largest to be discovered. Okay, now what's interesting here is they extracted the diamond here at Karowe mine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, in Botswana. Okay, and then in 2020, the two companies that team up, you have Louis Vuitton to show up the Sewelo diamond, and also from the Karowe mine, which each of the three parties taking ownership here. Now, obviously, Louis Vuitton is one of the big brands that we know of, luxury handbags for male and female at that. And obviously, according to the CEO of HB Antwerp, Oded Mansouri, he mentions that we've been in the business for many years, for quite some time, and these types of things do get us excited because of the sheer size and obviously the sheer potentiality of the price it's going to fetch once it's been cut into finished product here, whether it be put on a ring, earrings, or whatever jewelry that they will auction, or maybe as a standalone diamond here. And obviously having it in limited supply tends to inflate the price exponentially higher. Now, whether it's worth your money, obviously caters to a limited select group of individuals only here. And what's interesting, the company did by using an X-ray machine to locate and identify 1,000 diamonds here. Now, obviously, diamonds is finite resources here, and actually other companies have tried to find ways to grow diamonds here, or lab-grown diamonds. So making it more viable, make it more consumer-friendly. So make it more a commodity rather than a rarity here. Now, whether that bears fruit, obviously those who selling or mining for diamonds won't be too glad to hear about that. But obviously, for this expedition, it's costing them a lot of money to be able to dig up those precious items, and obviously they want to maximize their investment by selling it for a exorbitantly high price. And is there someone willing to pay for that item? I'm sure there is. And if it's expensive, there are the uber rich who can, money's not an issue as long as they get a rare piece of gemstone, in this case a diamond here. Anyway, I think that concludes our discussion for today. So if you have any questions, I leave the link in the description for any of the articles that I have discussed today. Also, don't forget to leave a like a subscribe button. Hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed these types of content. You can also check out my other segments in this channel. We have business update as well as guides, tutorials, and tips. Or you can also check out BizTalk here if you like long format discussions here. Anyway, as always, I'll see you in the next one. Same time, roughly same time, but same channel always. So the time changes from depending on the week here. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.